It's Miss C, your favorite global teacher, here with another recap. This is just a super quick disclaimer. These are not my opinions. This is not how I feel. These are the topics that you need to know in order to pass the New York State Global History Regents. Next topic is the age of absolutism in Europe. We just finished learning about the Tokugawa shogunate, and we know that the shogun had 100% control over the Japanese people. Similarly, in Europe, the absolute monarch, king or queen, absolute, has full control. So an absolute monarch is somebody who has full control over their kingdom, and that's exactly what the age of absolutism means, a time in Europe when absolute monarchs were in charge. Now, there is one catch to being an absolute monarch, and the catch is that absolute monarchs need to claim divine right. Divine right is the idea that God chose kings. So the church would specifically give a blessing and say that God chose you to be king. Without the blessing of the church, an absolute monarch would not have 100% power, because the church is in the background, and the Catholic Church, we're talking about Europe, we're talking about a European government. It was the Catholic Church that did control or have a lot of power in Europe. So similarly to the shogun thinking that the nobles or the daimyo would rebel, that's why he created the alternate attendance policy. In Europe, the absolute monarchs have their own policy of controlling the nobles, because they too are nervous that their nobles would rebel too. Because remember, nobles have money, they can get an army, they can afford it, all that kind of good stuff. The absolute monarch also wanted to control the nobles to prevent a rebellion. Now, if we remember the alternate attendance policy, the nobles are allowed to leave the castle as long as the family stays. But with the absolute monarchs, you were not allowed to leave the castle for days, not answer to the king. All the nobles were expected to live in the castle and attend court. And no, court is not jail, it's not a judge, it's not any of that type of stuff. It's that entertainment in the castle. It's where all the nobles gathered. There were card games, there were parties, they ate dinner, they had meetings, all that kind of good stuff was at court. So King Louis expected the nobles to attend court daily, and if you were missing, you were to consult with him. Also remember, absolute monarchs are getting money from overseas colonies through mercantilism. So absolute monarchs are filthy rich, and they never share money with their people normally. The people pay taxes. The people don't see the tax money being used on them or giving back to the community. Now, another aspect that we have to keep in mind is that if absolute monarchs have 100% control over their people, that means that the people have no say, have no control. They have 0% power. And the absolute monarch is allowed to make the rules. So he is able to make whatever law he wants to. He can kill whoever he wants to. He could wake up one day and be like, ooh, ladies with red hair, I don't like that. All of them need to die. And that's exactly how a lot of these absolute monarchs, how they acted. Also, the people do not have rights. The people do not have freedom. Okay, that's why enlightenment, which will be the next video, is going to come into key, because it's like, well, the people have no say, the people have no power. They're supposed to answer to the king. They're supposed to give taxes to the king. They're supposed to do all these things to the king, but the king is not giving the people any freedom. There's a couple of enduring issues that we can kind of attach to it. Obviously, the enduring issue that represents the age of absolutism is a desire for power, because absolute monarchs want to keep their power by controlling the people. You can also do inequity represents the age of absolutism, because the absolute monarch holds, and the church holds, all the power, and the people have no freedom. They're not treated equally, you know what I'm saying? Or we can, if we're talking about divine right, the enduring issue that represents divine right is impact of ideas and beliefs, because it's the church's idea and the absolute monarch's idea that the king needs approval from God. You know, that's an idea that's created. The regents will absolutely ask about the age of absolutism in various ways. We're going to look at some multiple choice. We're going to look at short answer. So if we're looking at this multiple choice question set, remember for every one document, there are 2 questions attached to it. And we notice how long this document is. There's a lot of words up in here. So you definitely do want to read the document, but my advice is always to first read the questions to see if you can answer the question maybe without the document, or just a good idea to know what you're looking for. Like, what do you have to answer by reading this document? So in this first question right here, it's comparing about the shogun's castle at Edo and the absolute monarchs, in this case, King Louis's palace of Versailles. Like, what are they? You know, what similarity, what commonality do they have? And well, I am going to read the document, you know what I'm saying? But I'm also going to just look at my options, you know. It's definitely not monastic centers of learning. First of all, monastic, what's that? You know what I'm saying? Monastic is religious, you know, but it's not a church. It's not a monastery, you know what I'm saying? So, or a place where priests live. So that's definitely not going to be the answer. And then if you notice, 3 and 4 have to do with like protection and military. And the regents will do this. Like, if it's not a symbol of protection, it's not a symbol of the military. Because the military is the protection at the time. And if it's not the military, it's not going to be that protection. So automatically those cancel each other out. Now, just by process of elimination, I got to this answer. They are symbols of power and wealth. Hello, these castles are huge. That's a lot of money going in there. And obviously, if the king and the nobles live there, that is going to be a symbol of power. The most powerful people in the kingdom live there. But then if you go back up in the reading, this specific line, it says power in it. So that's going to be the answer. So that's why I always encourage you to read the question, but use process of elimination, see what you could get to, and then go back up in the reading and just verify that that's the answer. And if we're looking at the second question, it's what similarities do these leaders have in common? So the only option out of all these options, and if you know about the shogun's alternate attendance policy and the absolute monarch's expectation that nobles are at the castle every day, then obviously the answer is going to be rulers controlled where nobles live. Like, that's the only one that makes sense here. But of course, go up in the reading, you know, verify your answer. And if we're looking at this short answer question, remember I said the first question in a CRQ set is always historical circumstances. So if we look at this John Locke document, this is an Enlightenment document. That will be the next video. But if we look at this Enlightenment document, it's asking the historical circumstances of this writing by or from John Locke. The age of absolutism is the historical circumstance. So Enlightenment, anything, is the idea that the absolute monarchs have 100% control, restrict and limit freedom. That's why John Locke believed that every person is born with natural rights, freedoms that the government can't take away from you, that the absolute monarchs were. So you could definitely use age of absolutism for this historical circumstance question also. Thank you for slaying global with me. Bye.